All right. I think it started. Okay. So, welcome to the Refined Strength podcast. Mark Tomanek is my guest. Mark, how are you feeling today?
I'm good. I'm still catching up on sleep from the weekend, but I feel the life coming back, and I'm getting back to training myself and getting a bunch of check-ins done. We've got 3 athletes this weekend, all figure, by the way. So we're continuing this figure timeline. I'm very excited about that. It's
Shira, and then Scober. I forget her first name.
Alyssa.
And then who else?
Yeah. And Lisa. Lisa's going back on stage.
Oh, yeah. Duh. Yeah, that figure pro lineup at Atlantic Coast. That's a big one.
It's ridiculous. Like, it's so many people. I think it's like 26 or 27 people. Yeah. But you can't help but be excited, especially after her, 5th and 6th place finishes in her prospective divisions at the Hurricane Pro. Hey, look, we look to come in at our best and do amazing things. I mean, just like you and I just did at Texas State Pro. Regardless of who's in that, we're coming to show up in our best and bring our best and definitely going to be our best.
Yeah. And she already looks just like so even better than she did when she did Hurricane, because I know she's leaner. She's going to be like even better peaked, and her posing has improved a lot too. So that's what I'm excited about.
That's a big one. That posing, man, it's like, even if your physique is perfect, you could be posing just a little bit off, especially in the pro league, and you look miles off.
Yeah, absolutely. So
I think our biggest thing especially with posing in any regard with any athlete, I'm like, man, it's just such an easy thing that's controllable within our power. And it kind of bums me out when it's not taken as seriously, but I think some athletes just don't know how far off the mark they are and how much they're not valuing the posing piece. And it seriously downgrades their physique they work so hard for. And it's this easiest thing to do, and we can focus on. There's plenty of great coaches out there to do this and help with this. And you work so hard to have this awesome physique. And you're posing just a little bit off, and even if it's a little bit off, depends on the stage. It just depends on who you're standing next to. It makes a big difference.
Yeah. For men and women, I see that a lot in men too, is like people will get on stage and they're like, they just hit their mandatories and they don't realize just how good they could look if they just hit them better. And if they knew some of like the little nuances and cues to like with like Lisa, for example, just like bringing her arms down. That's like something I see so much in figure competitors is like, your arms are up and you lose your shoulders. You lose that cap, and you don't necessarily lose your lats if you bring your arms down. It's a matter of finding out what positioning works best for your body. So,
well, I think there's a couple different pieces to that. So, with men, they like to pose the way that they like to pose, and they don't want anybody to usually tell them that they're posing either sucks or this pose that they really like doesn't look good. And maybe there's some cases where there's a little bit of arrogance there where, I don't need to be told how to pose. I know how to pose. I know how to look. And it's like, well, there's also, you got to remember, there's people that have been in this game for many, many years and that have experience levels well beyond what you have. And you should take that advice very seriously if you want to present the best, biggest, most symmetrical and aesthetic physique that you can possibly display. Yeah. On the opposite end, it's like, I find with posing specifically, it's like, it's such an art, and there's times where you grow a lot of muscle tissue. And I think people neglect that changes a lot in how you move and how you feel and how you do this connection you have neurologically with your muscle tissue. So even if you took an off season, you're like, well, I had a posing coach before. I learned everything that I needed to. I'm good with my posing. Like, if you grew and you added muscle tissue, there's a little bit of like this foreign connection that you have to this new tissue that you need to be able to display it. So having this posing coach in both off season and in prep, whether you are a elite pro in the Olympia level or you're a beginner, it's needed across the board.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things that was cool before Texas State Pro finals is Jessica Reyes, who won that show. And I think that was her 30th pro win. She found me before finals because we had like the show started late, so we were all just hanging out backstage and in the hallway. and she saw me going over my poses with Liana, who has been helping with my posing throughout my prep. And she was like, "Hey, can I see your poses really quick?" And so I don't know if I told you this, but so she had me go through my poses, and she gave me some cues on just like how to make them a little bit better and just like position myself a little bit better, and like gave me cues I had never heard before. And that was one thing that was just like one of those big perspective shifts, is like I was really confident about my posing, and I obviously like I had already gotten to that top 3 and 4 spot in prejudging. So like it wasn't like I necessarily like needed that change, but I obviously did, because then my poses looked so much better. And now I can use that in my, you know, as I go and I grow through into the next season. And just seeing that she had that, just like, I want to help and I want to like be a part of moving this sport forward. She gave me a lot of great compliments too. And just like saying like, I would have thought you had gotten better placing at Hurricane. Like you are more of what they're saying that they want figure to be. And so like, I hope you continue to compete and just get rewarded. And like, here's how to keep doing that and moving forward with just some posing cues.
It's amazing what you can learn in the most unlikely of circumstances from the most unlikely of people.
Yeah.
And not to say he isn't a great teacher, but it's like, you know, she's winning her 30th pro show.
Yeah.
You think
she didn't have to do that.
Really take the time to go and look at individuals and be like, oh yeah, by the way, but no, she did. And I think that's really cool within this sport when people at the top are taking time to pass things down. And I mean, you know, I always have said that you can learn something from anybody in any circumstance. But I think that's a really cool, you know, she's your competition at that point. You know, yeah she's not going to lose that night. Like no one's taking that from her. You know, there's a reason why she's 130, but she's like, hey, look, I'm here to win. I'm going to do that. And I can also pass this along to you, who's definitely coming up the ranks very quickly.
Yeah. So how would you describe this prep in as few of words as possible? This prep of ours.
Easy. That's it.
It's easy? No, why was it easy?
So I use the word easy because there weren't any points in the prep where I was stumped, where I went, man, we just hit a brick wall. I really got to find out some type of crafty solution on how to get around this. I mean, there's so many times in a prep, and I'm sure you've come to this point in your career now, you know, as you have prepped more competitive athletes, you're going to find some where their body doesn't want to do anything. No matter what you do, you're trying all these things. And I've been in this position many times with the amount of athletes that I've prepped at this point. In your case, we never ran into a position where I was like, fuck, how am I going to get around this stone wall? You know, the body's just not cooperating right now. We're inflamed. I don't know why we're experiencing inflammation. It was so easy to just steadily have you trickle down, keep pulling, keep making moves, turn the dials, you know, turn up the heat a little bit more, turn it a little bit less, give you some refeeds. Let's see how you respond to those refeeds. Oh, you respond as we anticipated. Okay, great. Now let's take this and move forward with this in mind, this calculation in mind, and, you know, dig a little bit more, get a little bit leaner, and, you know, get you to a place where eventually you were, in my opinion, in shape, you know. And I think even as we went from your first show to your second show to get you a little bit more in shape, it was just because we looked at it and go, okay, you know, I'm looking at the people on stage. I'm like, we're close, we're real close. And obviously it was your best showing yet, but we wanted to get in those top spots. And to do that, we had to be a little bit leaner. So we weren't afraid to take it there. Even when we did that after that long prep and bringing all that weight off of you. I mean, what were you, 172 in the off season?
That was peak off season.
Yeah, you're 172, and we got you down to 138 in that first show, and then 136 in the second one. I mean, it's a good amount of weight, man. You're talking almost 40 pounds, and the body never ceased to want to respond appropriately. And that's because we never pushed into territory that I thought was overly abrasive, and that's why I would categorize that prep is easy, you know. And that's the best word I have for it, because there was no point where I looked at anything and I was stumped. Immediately when I opened up your pictures every time, I was like, I know what to do. Without even looking at your data in most points, it was just very evident about what to do for your body, and it made this prep easy.
What do you think is like the biggest reason for that in terms of like why things responded as well as they did?
Because you've grown. Yeah, absolutely. I know exactly what it is. It's because you've grown significantly as an individual. You grew to a place that I've seen you grow within the past, 2 years, especially within the past 2 years. Obviously, from the moment you started with me, I saw your mind expand. And it expanded into new territories where you were seeing new things. You were open to new objectives. You were open to new experiences. You really pushed yourself beyond your limits. And then I saw you settle into this place of calmness and stillness. No matter what was happening, no matter what pieces were moving, you were always in a state of like what seemed calmness and stillness. And maybe there was obviously thoughts of chaos every now and then. That's okay. It's very normal for the human experience, what you're doing. But that piece where there wasn't any of this, you never lacked composure and confidence within not only what we were doing, but I think yourself. And that a lot of that has contributed to how you conduct yourself mentally, how you have taken care of yourself and the positions you put yourself in your life with the people surrounding you. You've built the supporting cast to be successful. You have no reason to second guess. You're not sitting there going, can I, should I, what if this doesn't work? It was always, I mean, don't get me wrong. You're going to naturally have some of those feelings, but you didn't dwell on them. You would have them, I'm assuming, and you would move past them. The people that dwell on these things stay in that pool of mud, and they just get stuck there. And so the reason why you were so successful is, you did all the things in the offseason you needed to do. You added the muscle. We did blab work, made sure you're good. We used the appropriate PEDs at the right time, the right place, but still none of that would have worked because I've done that with other people that couldn't master stillness and calmness and confidence within self and what we're doing. I've been through that process, people not doing that. And that's why you were so successful here.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's been one of the biggest things I've noticed in myself and just like been really proud of myself for is that mastery, that self-mastery, and just like letting go of the need for a control. When we do that, when we let go of the need and the like the anxiety that comes from like not being able to control stuff, we actually gain more control. And I think that's one of those things that a lot of people are always chasing is like, I need to control this. I need to have, more oversight. I need to have more certainty. And when you're working with a coach who knows more than you and who believes in you, maybe even more than you believe in yourself, like you're going to have uncertainty. And so like, I think something that keeps ringing in my mind about just like reflecting on this prep is the fact that after stepping off stage in 2021 in November, right? Like literally this coming weekend, 3 years ago, that was my 6th last place in a row of not doing well. And my 2nd prep in a row where I had lost and I had failed big time. And like, I still don't know like how I decided that like I was just going to keep going and keep trying, because I also had plenty of people who like were wondering like, why do you keep going? Why do you keep just like trying when you're obviously not good at this? Like in terms of like, obviously I'm not placing well. So the definition of insanity is like trying something over and over again, doing it the same way and but expecting different results. But right. To me, I just like, I never thought of it like that. I thought of it as like, well, if I can improve this, I can keep improving my outcome. And like, all right, after that, throughout that last season in 2021, like I came to a lot of just those come to Jesus moments of knowing like, I'm in the wrong place. I need something wildly different than what I'm used to. And that was that letting go that you talked about, is like, I knew I needed a very different type of coach from what I had been used to. And out of everyone that I had talked to, I talked to like 4 or 5 coaches. You were probably the one that like scared me the most in terms in terms of like, I don't know if I'm gonna like this guy. And it was because you're very like you're very direct, you're very like focused, you're very like structured, and you had this rigidity about you that I was kind of afraid of letting go of the flexibility that I had come to be so comfortable with. I had been doing my own training my entire athletic career outside of like one small period where I did my coach's programming and then I got injured. And so it was like that, like handing over like supplementation, PEDs, like starting PEDs for the first time. That was like, I knew it was necessary, but it was also kind of scary, especially coming from a place of not knowing anything really about them. And then, but I think just realizing that the only way out of this like mud that I was in is just through it, and to like do things we're uncomfortable with. And so, you know, just totally deciding to let that go. That was like the precursor to that calmness. That I remember I talked to Austin about like just my progress over this off season and into the prep is like the first year together. It was very much just like I wanted to learn as much as I could and just like totally let go and do everything as perfectly as possible. And what that gave me was just like so much better self-awareness than I had ever had, and seeing just the power of that self-awareness and how I'm able to then like make it my own more, and like find more of like my own rhythm with things and be flexible with myself when it's necessary, but not when it's unnecessary, you know?
My God, what you just described so wonderfully in detail throughout your journey was the lack of attachment theory.
Yeah.
That's what you just described perfectly, that people can't get a grip on. They're trying to grip too hard.
Yeah.
But what's that saying is like the thing that scares you the most, you should probably do, you know?
Yeah.
That's what, I mean, truth be told, you either love me or you hate me. And that's what I find. I find there's such a polarity around someone that is so non-polarizing in the fact that like, I really don't have any crazy claims, or, you know, I don't really say outlandish.
Yeah.
I'm not loud, very quiet, very reserved, but I scare the shit out of people. And I've always done this throughout my career. Because I'm direct and I don't see the need. Somebody says they want to do something, I say, okay, let's figure out how. And I don't worry about all the other minor details. I'll figure it out along the way because I trust myself to be able to do that. And what you ended up finding through this lack of attachment experience, was that you put the pieces in place for you to be successful. You knew and experienced what you didn't want to experience again, last place, because that shit gets old. And you're right, it needed to change. There was a lot that needed to change, and you had to do the most scary thing possible. And you literally turn the board upside down and go, okay, scrap it. Let's start over and let's rebuild. Well, you rebuilt it really well with the right people, the right players, the right pieces, and the right mindset. And within that, you trusted those pieces and yourself so much. You trusted yourself that you can execute on a daily basis without mess ups, without second guessing yourself, because you trusted yourself to do that. That's the main piece of theory of lack of attachment, is trusting yourself. Because if you can trust yourself to execute and do the necessary, you don't have to worry about what's going to happen along the way, because you know that no matter what happens, you're going to find a way to be successful. Because if it didn't even work out with me, I guarantee you would have found another way to do it. You're not going to stop. You're going to keep finding a way, and you will be successful because you're relentless in that pursuit. And you trust yourself in that pursuit. And then you ended up putting me in place, and you trusted, and you learned, and you learned to trust within that. And that's where it led to this symbiotic relationship of, hey, look, when he says it, we're going to do it. And sure as shit, we did it, every single time. And that's because you trust yourself. I trust myself to do that. And together we can trust ourselves to move forward and find out a better way. Because I'm sure as hell not going to get stuck in my ways and get married to something. If something doesn't work out, I'm like, oh, that's the way. No, there's so many solutions I present my athletes. I'm like, look, if you don't like this solution, just tell me. I'll find another one. Yeah. That's my job. So many people get married to things because they're uncertain with themselves and their actual capabilities. And then it limits their potential possibilities. You never once did that. And I never once did that. And it led to a great outcome. So this was a great display of lack of attachment for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of people they're impatient, and they have these attachments, and they identify with certain things. For for so long, people, I think a past version of me, especially in prior off seasons and preps, was attached to just having more control over things myself, and the attachment to feeling like, I knew more than than most people. And so what that did was that that I found in my last prep was that I had lost trust in my coach. And that was both his doing, but also my doing, because I had become so accustomed to just kind of doing my own thing and being a very hands-off client, being a client that didn't really need to ask questions because I already knew what the answer was going to be. So then starting with you, I think when we first started our first enhanced growth phase, I remember asking you I want you to explain everything to me like I'm a child. I wanted to feel that just I know nothing so I can know everything, because that's how I'm going to learn more, not only for myself, but for future clients. And that ended up helping me to be so much more susceptible and so much more of a sponge for knowledge, for getting more education for myself, and taking in that education in a better, more sustainable way, so I do actually learn and I can apply it myself. Because before that, I was honestly scared of educating myself on some things, because I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to do it at a high level, and I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to really apply it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing behind when I say never a master, always a student. I'm always so learn. And sometimes I'm talking to people and I act like I don't know anything. So I can absorb everything, because even if it's a different perspective that I might not agree with, I can probably still take something away from that.
Yeah.
It's so funny though, because in our journeys, whether it's, it's anybody's journey, we could talk about, this one or anybody else's that's listening, we all desire such a need for control. And that control within what we're doing, whether it's in your case, you're I need to do something differently. I need to learn more. I'm still afraid to, right? Or if you were to take the opposite end of the spectrum in your prep and you were to say, I'm going to try to control all these little variables that I can't control, you would have derailed this so quickly. And I guess if I'm saying anything, there's such a need for this for people. But if they were to let go and just control what they can control within themselves, like you have, would have been they would be so successful.
Yeah, they get in their own way.
Yeah, they get in their own way. I was just telling Jocelyn this yesterday. I was like, yo, because she wants to do something at her job. I was like, it's funny. You're trying to overthink and control the things you can't control, but the things you can control, you're not controlling at all. She kind of had the script. Shit, you're right. So many people try to control the things they can't control because of insecurities and they don't believe in themselves enough.
Yeah.
But I think you displayed it so wonderfully. Even though there were things that you didn't know or you needed to know, you sought that out to add those pieces, to give yourself the confidence in self and your supporting cast to move forward with just extreme diligence and decisiveness. And so I think just all that played out just so great.
Yeah, I think the supporting cast thing is a big one that I've found, just as I make more calls and prioritize more, set more boundaries with people, but also just give more to the right people and accept more from the right people. I've found just how powerful that is, and how I've also in that I recognize more and more when people are allowing others to hold themselves back. And you're almost empowering others to hold you back by just being a people pleaser. I used to be a huge people pleaser back a few years ago. And so for me, letting go of that, letting go of this, what I thought was I'm a, servant heart. I really love helping people. I thought that that's who I was, but really what I was doing was I was trying to please others and make others happy for my own benefit, for my own ego. And that's what people pleasing really is, that people don't really like to accept, is that you're not doing it for other people. You're doing it for yourself. So you feel good. And so you have validation that you're not expendable in a job or a relationship or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's what you want matters most. So don't be a people pleaser just because you think it's for other people. Show up for people if you really want to show up for them. Don't do it if you are doing it for other reasons. And don't start a relationship with someone just because, they like you. and and like you think that's your only option, or you think it's going to check a box, because that's only setting you up for the possibility of being with someone who's not meant for you, and who's not really going to help you push forward in your life. Because if you're performing in any way just so someone will like you, or someone will love you, or stay around, or give you what you think you need from them, then you're not going to have the support that like allows you to really thrive.
People please, because they think it's the path of least resistance too.
Yeah,
they think it's easier to make these people happy rather than have confrontation. But what they don't see is, after the fact of people pleasing, they will then be upset with themselves, and they'll sit with that. Yeah. And they'll rummage through every single day, and they'll be disappointed in themselves, and they don't realize how much stress that carries around and how much tension that carries around on them until they free themselves from that, when they finally stand up for themselves and speak what they want. Boundaries. I've heard someone say people pleasing is one of the most manipulative things you can do.
Yeah, it is.
Because you're really doing it for a couple of different reasons. One, you're doing it to make someone view you differently and value you without being just yourself. You're doing it via actions. And it could give people a false perception and reality of you, right? So it is manipulative in a sense. But it just absolute self-betrayal. It's self-betrayal. And I think that's where a lot of people get it mixed up, man. I really wish, and I really wish everyone could listen to this and see how they're self-betraying by helping not necessarily helping other people. Let me rephrase that, because helping other people is a good thing, just not self-neglecting while helping somebody. And I think it's important with boundaries when you draw them, because I've done that many, many times. I've severely cut down on my businesses this year. I've severely cut down on the people that I work with, because I refuse to self-sacrifice anymore. I set boundaries. I want to do what I want to do, what makes me happy. I don't want to necessarily just make other people happy. I want to be happy too.
Yeah. And if making yourself happy happens to also make others happy and improve the lives of others, like, those are the right people to be around. And those are the people that are like the right people to help. But like the people that don't jive with how you want to serve yourself and be yourself, then like they can find what they need elsewhere, you know?
Yeah, it's pretty alarming when you start doing better for yourself, or you start making decisions for yourself, and those people don't say congratulations, or those people don't really cheer for you as loud anymore when you start doing better for you. That's an alarming wake-up call. And I've seen that a few times this year play out for me, and I'm like, okay, I see it now.
It sucks, but it's the reality.
But you free yourself from that and that person or that negative energy, and you are able to see so much clearer on the other side of that veil.
Yeah. So what when you were first starting out as a coach and just like business owner, what do you feel like helped you see yourself in like the place you're at now, where you're coaching very high level athletes? And obviously, like when you first start out, you're not coaching high level athletes. You're coaching maybe like your friends and your parents, or, you know, people that aren't even remotely there and never will be. So how do you get from that point to now?
I still coach my parents, by the way, just to be clear. I love them, man. Okay, so this is interesting. This is a very interesting question, because I don't think anybody's worded it like this to me. They always just kind of ask, how'd you get where you're at, you know? And you asked more so, how'd you see yourself within that? And it's so funny, because I don't feel like I was worthy until very recently of that. I think that's definitely been an experience, but that's also part of what has driven me to become great. At the same time, it's not necessarily imposter syndrome that I have. I have battled with that before, but it's worthiness or provability within a certain capacity that I've been searching for. It wasn't until I started making a lot of, and I guess I'll kind of skip ahead a little bit and then circle back. The famous weave. So when I realized that what I felt was right was actually the right decision. So the feeling, and then I acted on it, and it ended up being the right thing. When I started listening to that, that's when I started realizing, oh, you really are this. You really are that. Because for so long, you will sit there and battle yourself in the beginning, regardless of who you're working with. And my God, it gets harder as you climb up the ladder. That feeling of really know what I'm doing. You start working with the best in the world. Oh my God, are you sure you're capable of that? And you really second guess yourself. But once I start, and I do this a lot in check-ins now, I'll look at the pictures that are in front of me. And without looking at the data or anything, I go, here's the move I'm going to make. Then I circle back to the data to confirm it is what I saw via intuition and self-belief inside. When I started connecting those dots a lot this year for me, man, I really saw myself in the position of where I am today. And I would say where I am today is way different than even 6 months ago. I'm moving at this very fast rate, especially like this year, man. And even with the past few years, it's been crazy. I think when I started, I just hoped and dreamed someone would see me. I just hoped and dreamed that I would be noticed for what my intentions truly were. Because my intentions were truly to build one of the best bodybuilding teams and become the best coach, but in the sense of I'm here to actually take care of people. I'm not just here to win. And I really wanted people to see that. It took a long time because I came from a place where there were very little professional bodybuilders around me. There was like at the time there was none, basically. And then over time, like a few masters athletes won and things like that, which is cool. But I don't really associate with them. I don't really talk to them. Not in a bad way. It's just I just don't come across them. I had no one to co-sign me, no one to mentor me. I literally just started coaching because I loved bodybuilding. It was pretty simple. You know, I was around the bodybuilding industry growing up my whole life. So it was easy for me to pick things apart, start reading notes that my dad had. And I started reverse engineering things. Got on forums, started learning as much as I could, just being a sponge, and everything that I could learn, I soaked it up, talked to people. And I guess I didn't ever set out with these crazy intentions of growing this big team. I didn't set out of the intentions of like, you know, coaching specific individuals. All these things just fell into place for me as I kept going, as I kept doing.
And just kept believing in yourself and your abilities. And like you mentioned, the kind of that testing of yourself and testing of your intuition, especially when you don't have someone like checking your work, you have to check your work. And you have to they're basically just receipts for your work and proof that like, yeah, okay, my thought was right. So now I can trust my thought and my intuition a little bit more.
I've never had somebody to check my work. And I think that's one thing that I feel maybe I lacked in my career earlier on. And it led to a lot of missed calls or mistakes, but those mistakes led me to the place I am now where I'm not making very many mistakes.
Yeah.
And I'm very consistent. I wish I would have had that. And I think that's the one thing that the coaches that work with me, I'm like, man, you guys are really lucky. Because like I will at any point of the drop of a hat, you send me something, I'm going to answer it and look this over. But not gave me a lot of doubts. And I knew where I was like, I knew where I was heading. I knew what I wanted to do, but to visualize it from someone that came from a city in Ohio where there's not a lot of bodybuilding community, to where you know, the only bodybuilder I really knew was my dad and one of my friends at the time. That's all. And I just wanted to try bodybuilding. So I tried it and ended up coaching people along the way because I was like, yeah, let's do this. Just my friends. But either way, it wasn't until recently where I was like, yeah, now I'm him. You know, it was through that testing of self and checking on self and holding myself to high standards. And I found that through my time, my standards have only gotten higher. In some cases, that's been really good because it's kept me on high alert. It's kept me climbing. And other people around me, it's really steered them down a different path because I think it either scared them or they realized that's not what I really want. These standards are too high. And it made them really uncomfortable. It made them really either pretend to be something they're not or end up just almost kind of shying away from it entirely, you know, in some cases. And maybe that I'm to blame for that, and that's okay. I'll take the blame for that. But those high standards held me to a place to where I wanted to be. And at the end of the day, there's no one else that's going to do that for me. There's no one else looking over my shoulder to meet high standards. And honestly, I'm not going to live any other way.
Yeah. Well, you're the only one that can really do what you need for your life to be better and to improve. It's like a lot of people, I think, wait for someone to like kind of give them permission in life to be better or to raise your standards. Like nobody's going to do that for you. It's very rare for someone to do that for you. You have to seek it out either in others, like hiring a mentor or looking up to someone and like kind of studying what they do and studying how they are and seeing how you can do some of the same things for yourself, or it's, you know, just doing it for yourself and not depending on anybody.
And it's so tough. It's so tough because you're right. People are looking for permission. I never looked for permission. I never asked. I just did.
Yeah.
And I fucked up so many times. I think people have a misconception that I still don't fuck up. I definitely still fuck up. Both of I still make wrong calls. You know, it's very, very little wrong calls in my coaching, but in my personal life, I make wrong calls all the time. You know, I'm still figuring it out. I mean, my God, I'm 34 years old, still figuring it out. And I love it. I love that. But
everyone,
the one thing that yes. And I think a lot of people don't realize that when they look at people on social media or something they look up to and they hold them to incredibly unrealistic standard. Yeah. But we're all still figuring out, and that's okay. But I think coming up for me, it's like getting to the point to recognize myself as the person that can coach these high level athletes. It took so much damn work. It was just, the only difference between me and other people that are still trying to do that or get to that point is I never gave up. I never gave up, even though odds were stacked against me a lot of times, or I ran into a lot of heartbreaks coaching people that I thought they were very promising, were going to do great things, and they just never followed through, or maybe I didn't vibe with them well, or they didn't like my style of coaching. And so I just had to keep going, no matter what. But for me, there was no other choice. Like I didn't have a backup plan either. So, you know, I hope that answers your question a little bit. I know it's kind of a ramble.
No, it does. I think that's like the beauty of the answer is the fact that it's like, it's not one thing. It's like, if you have this dream or this goal of becoming a high level coach, you know, so many people want to be coaches, and they ask, I'm sure you get this question a lot. I get this question a lot. It's like, how do you get to where you're at? And because like you've done so well and you have this business and you have this following or whatever, it's like, how do you get there? And like the answer is that like there's a lot of ways to get there, but you have to, like, the first step is just fucking doing it and trying it, because if you don't, like, nobody's going to give you the formula. Like I could tell you exactly what I've done to get to where I'm at now, but most people don't want to hear and don't want to consider doing what I've done, which is I coached on the side for like 3.5 years or so before I even joined my last company as a coach. And I didn't tell anybody I was coaching for those times because I worked in gym management. I worked as an executive assistant, and I just didn't want to put it out there because I didn't want attention in that way. I didn't want to be that girl that got her pro card and then became a coach. I just wanted to quietly learn and do that stuff. And everyone I've told that to, there's this kind of like, you know, fall in the hope from them. They're like, oh, that's a long time.
Yes.
You know, like that's a long time of doing it for like little to nothing and to like, you know, not be in business for yourself, you know?
And the unfortunate truth is the fastest way to get to the place that you want to go is to fail a ton of times, is to mess times. Think about it. People look for the perfect relationship. I don't know if that exists. It may in some facet. What do? Oh, you date a lot of people to figure out what you like and what you don't like.
Yeah.
They're not all going to
boundaries.
Yeah. They're all going to end beautifully. Most of them end miserably. That's okay. But you find out what you like and what you don't like, and you learn from those experiences. And same with coaching. Like, you're going to have to mess up a lot. And I think a lot of people are just so crippled or paralyzed by fear of messing up that they never take the opportunity to mess up. And in fact, that's where I've learned the most. That's how I've gotten to where I'm at, because I failed, did things wrong. Like, you were humans, and we have this beautiful experience of life in front of us, and the ability to mess up, and you have the ability to move forward with a new perspective and enlightened or with more wisdom and improve your position. But the problem is people either get paralyzed by fear, or they're paralyzed by and defeated by their mistakes. And they never look at the silver lining of there's a lot of beauty in that mess up and in that mistake. You just have to see it. You know, you have to stare at it long enough so that it kind of stares back at you and you can go, oh, I see you now. Yeah. That's what I had to do a lot in my career to get where I'm at. And now it's, you know, it's here. I'm rocking, man. It's been a cool year. It's been a hard year, but it's been a cool year. And I really look forward to what's to come. I mean, this year is rounding out really cool for me.
Yeah, it is. I think that's like, I think about failures and just like how important they are and valuable they are and beautiful they are, because I look at like the win that I experienced this weekend. It's like top tier moment of my entire life, right? Like getting third place next to two Olympians, one of which was second at the Olympia for the last few years. Like that's fucking cool. I wouldn't have the feeling I have about that, and it wouldn't be as sweet if I had not failed as much as I did. And I wouldn't be the coach I am today if I had not failed as much as I did. And, you know, it was earlier this year, I had a client leave, you know, they said it was financial reasons. It was kind of tough, but I was like, you know, they'll probably be back, right? Then I find out that they started working with another coach who was another competitor who is a bigger, better competitor than me, and also a coach, obviously. And I was like, for a moment, I was like pretty heartbroken. Like, damn, I'm not as like that's more important to that person than who I am as a coach. And like, I had that moment of feeling like I'm not good enough. And that's why, you know, they didn't want to stay with me or didn't want to go with me, and they didn't want to tell me the truth or whatever. And then I just remembered that's like, sometimes we just don't, you know, we just need something different. We need to learn the lesson, whether it's a good or a bad lesson. And that one person leaving me doesn't change who I am as a coach, doesn't change who I can be as a competitor. I can still become that high level competitor with or without one person believing in me. And so it's like that when you have failures and make mistakes, or if people don't believe in you, like you have the power to take that with a grain of salt, or really take it to heart and let it totally change who you are and everything that you do. And sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, you'll look back on that moment and losing that athlete, and for some reason you'll go, I'm so glad I experienced that, because I have experienced similar things where it was really heartbreaking, me pouring years in, so much time in, and they're like, they leave. And most times people don't have the testicular fortitude to be honest about why, which I just wish people would. I wish you'd stay straight up. Like, honestly, I wish that within the first 5 minutes of meeting people just tell me what they want. Yeah. That way I'm on board. And my God, so, you know, Mr. Simplicity over here, obviously it's my forte, or Mr. Direct, I should say. But it's funny because I have had so much, and again, this doesn't take away from the athletes that have won with me, because I appreciate every win or quote unquote non-victory in first place. But there's something to be said about the athletes with me that have lost before, whether it's many times or it's for their first time. Because I've also been on the opposite end of the spectrum where I have endless overall wins and first places from true novice athletes. Mm-hmm. You know what happened to most of them? They quit bodybuilding after their first show. They're done. Now, no shame to them. I am not mad at them whatsoever. It's purely just an observation. And they have other things they want to do and accomplish in their life. And like, bravo, I'm so glad you saw that. I'm so glad you conquered. Thanks for doing it with me. I appreciate you. But there's something to be said. And there's something to be said about the athletes who lose. Because I've had athletes this year that are competing for the first time take second place or third place. And they're like, Coach, I'm just ready to go to off season to get better. Yeah. Like, holy shit. You know, or you losing and coming in last place how many times? 6 times in a row. Yeah. At that point in time, either A, you're like, fuck this, I'm done. Or B, you're going to have a little bit of a chip on your shoulder. You're like, something needs to change. I'm going to figure it out. And you did. And my God, the reason why you were able to is because you have the mental toughness from the losses that you faced. There's something to be said about athletes that lose. Athletes that lose go further than athletes that win all the time. At least initially. You can't just keep losing forever. Right. But yeah, I think think there's so much value. And so I guess the athletes that are listening, if you're not placing first in your first or second competition, I assure you, it's not a bad thing. Oh. It's not a bad thing if you see bodybuilding in your future for a long time. And those that just want to win once and then you're done to retire, bravo to you too. That's okay. The athletes that lose, though, man, I work with a lot of athletes now, and this is one shift I've noticed in my roster lately. They just want to do the thing. They don't care. They do want to win. Don't get me wrong. They're hardened to know that they want to win. They know what it takes, but they're so willing to do the work. Mm-hmm. They're not in it for the superficial reasons of looking great on social media. They don't give a shit how they look. They just want to win. They want to get to a point where they want to win, and they want to do the work too. And I think and you display that really well. You know, you're just like, I just want to do better. And it's what led that aptitude for work and willingness to do it. That's what got you to where you're at now.
Do you think people who have that, do you think people set their bar too low sometimes when they're like, I don't care about my placing, I just want to do well?
I don't think they do that intentionally. They do that to cover up their insecurities.
Right.
For their and they know they didn't work hard enough. They know. See, the thing is, when people automatically put themselves in a position of they've lost, because that's what that is. That's a position of I've lost and I don't care what the placing is. I just want to get up there and have fun. Yes, fun is fun, but winning is way more fun than fun is fun. And ultimately, you can't, no one that has ever won will tell you any differently. The people that continue to lose, and they say that, is because they lack conviction in their efforts. And they know they're not worthy of the win, so they're automatically calling that beforehand. And again, that's no shade to them. If you want to just compete, just say that then. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I'll cheer you on it either way. I'm not going to be the coach for you, and you may not be the coach for them. But they will find the coach that just wants them to compete and puts them up there, 5-6 times a year. They'll probably get the gut dysbiosis or hormone dysfunction and come my way. They're like, yeah, I want something different, And they do. And people like them win pro cards after once they figure it out. And some just go, I'm done. This isn't for me. And that's okay too.
Yeah. Why do you think people give up on themselves when they truly do have potential?
They're doing it for the wrong. They're doing it for the wrong reasons. Mm-hmm. I have worked with people with such incredible potential. I mean, God-given potential to be the best. Some people that I saw, I was like, if you wanted to, you will be top 5 at the Olympia one day. And they don't make it past their first or second show. And it's crazy to say that someone going to the first show, I've seen that type of potential in, but it's true.
Yeah.
It's very true. And it's hard. It's very hard as a coach to just not be like, want to shake them, be like, come on. Like, you see what I see, but they have to want it. And unfortunately, they're doing it for the wrong reasons. It could be to, again, to have control in their life over something, to cover up how they feel about themselves. They think it's going to fix their problems in their perspective about self. Or they're working out of vengeance for someone else to prove that they can because they said I couldn't. Those are all the wrong reasons. You can't push yourself to an amazing, beautiful place out of hate in any capacity. You can only do it out of self-love. And so many people that I know personally that I've even worked with in the past that have incredible potential, they didn't make it, not because they're bad athletes, not because they're bad people, not because they weren't willing to do the work. It's because they were doing it for the wrong reasons. And when they found out what the right reasons were, they're like, well, that doesn't align with me. Well, yeah, no kidding. You found the right reason and you found it in something else, which is beautiful.
Yeah. I think people get once they get into competing, whether it's for just one season or a couple seasons, and then they start to feel that distancing, or they start to feel just less motivation, and they kind of want to do different things. I see this weird phenomenon of people still staying in the sport, still competing, but it's clear that they really don't love it. And they're only doing it because they feel like it's the only thing they can do to maintain control over their lives, or they keep prepping because it's the only thing they can do to stay on track with their diet or stay lean or stay relevant on social media. And what I wish more people would understand is you can have all of what bodybuilding gives you that's good without actually competing. and without actually, or with taking more time, even if you're going to keep competing, but just taking more time between shows, you know?
Yep, I see it very often. It's heartbreaking to see because I think some people don't even give themselves the chance or opportunity to see what else is out there.
Yeah.
Because like people won't explore fun.
Yeah.
Like the reason why I'm 34 still fucking around with Pokemon is because I took a chance to explore, you know? Or I'm 34, I'm getting back into grappling again after wrestling in college and hating it, but finding a different art form, and my old body doesn't necessarily keep up the same way as my 19-year-old body.
But it's fun like, figuring out how to keep up in a new body. Yeah.
My God. And people ask me like why some people will ask like, why are you training so hard still if it's not for bodybuilding? I'm like, well, there's other reasons to train. Yeah. There's so many things that we can explore and do. There's so many things that are fun in this world. And a lot of times I have the conversation with athletes because they'll ask me, well, what do I do on my rest days? Like, or sometimes I'll give them a week training break. They're like, what the hell am I going to do with my time? Training is my therapy. One, training's not therapy. Therapy's therapy. No. Two, well, let's find some fun shit. Time to explore a little. I don't care how old you are. There's a lot of I think a lot of people are just scared to try new things because it's weird, feel dumb trying new things. But like,
or they feel like it's not hardcore bodybuilding enough. Like I see that a lot as like bodybuilders who are, especially I see that a lot in pros, like pro bodybuilders who are like career bodybuilders. All they can even talk about is bodybuilding. They don't have anything else. And they don't have anything else in their life. And what I see in people like that is like, wow, they're going to have a rude awakening once they get injured and they can't compete. Or they, once something happens and they have to retire. What do you have left? You don't have anything left. Because you didn't take the time to explore like just other areas of life and other areas of the world to just like enjoy past bodybuilding or at the same time as bodybuilding.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people, when they do bodybuilding, that's all they do. It's their entire life. It's everything that they do. And people end up burning out or falling victim to that. And it's like at first, it's very excitable to be in bodybuilding. You're doing all these things, looking at all these changes.
Glamours.
But when you make it your only piece of your life and everything in your life revolves around that, and there's no other facets to the human that I'm looking at in front of me, I see a very short career, and I see a very, very unhappy person because
and probably even if the career lasts a long time, it's not as enjoyable to them because they start to resent it. They treat it like a job and like, yeah, we should love our jobs and do things we love if we can, but there's other parts of life that you can absolutely enjoy and that can even make bodybuilding more enjoyable.
100%. I mean, I think that's what I encourage my athletes to do a lot now is like, yo, take a step back. Whether that's in training less or being less obsessive about data, less obsessive about whatever we're working on and trying to explore other things. I think that's been one of the greatest things that I've seen my athletes now partake in. Like I've seen you in prep, travel, go and do things. And I was like, yes, go Rachel, because if you do that, you're going to have a lot more fun, quote unquote fun, outside of the prep, which creates a more fun life, and you're going to have a more successful prep. And that's why this, again, comes back to why this prep was so easy. You did all the right things outside of bodybuilding.
Yeah. Yeah, because when you're having fun with other parts of life that are not bodybuilding, what it does or what it did for me is that it allowed me to just really love bodybuilding even more because I can live my life and I cannot be miserable in prep. I'm not going to be one of those people that's just like nothing but bodybuilding and like other people can see that and not also resent bodybuilding. Like me and Austin would, go spend time with like his real estate circle of people and like they knew that I was in prep, but like I'm still out, I'm still having fun, I'm still like a social normal person. I'm just eating my own food. That's like really the only difference. Or maybe I'm not drinking or something like that. And what that does that I've found that I think is a cool part of the whole ripple effect of just doing good as an athlete and a coach is like showing people that it doesn't have to be this level of extreme that they probably thought it was. There's people outside of bodybuilding that think that it's just like this terrible thing because you have to eat this or that and you have to do that. And it's like, no, you do the things that you need to do to get from point A to point B, but you can do it in a way that you enjoy. and that fits in with your life.
Extremism in this sport is warranted when it needs to be extreme.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, I'm in the gym training. I only got 6 to 8 top sets. It's time to be extreme.
Right.
I'm in the contest prep and I have to be diligent about my diet. It's time to be extreme. Or, you know, I need proper recovery. So I need to sleep 8 hours a night. I need to set the boundaries around that. It needs to be extreme. So how can you be extreme about sleep? But you surely can be very, very serious about it. But then you need to step away. As humans, we only have a tolerance for something for so long. You know, if I play a video game and I burn myself on it because I spend 40 hours a week on it, by the next week, I'm like, I don't really want to play that anymore. Yeah. But if I play like an hour here or there, I'm always excited about it. You know, and
definitely.
It's the same bleed over into everyday life with bodybuilding specifically, because if you just make your whole world about it and you don't know yourself outside of that bodybuilding realm, you're looking in a mirror back at a person you don't even understand or know. And how are you supposed to have fun? If I ask somebody, what do you do for fun? And they tell me bodybuilding, I'm like, you don't even know yourself. And I hurt for you because I want you. I know that person because I was that person.
Yeah.
I lived so dead serious. And honestly, I ruined friendships. I ruined relationships. There were people that I hurt within that. And I still regret that today. I regret being so goddamn serious about it that I couldn't let one thing slip, you know, just for a little sake of family time.
Right.
It's heartbreaking to look back at. And I wish people would see there's so many different facets to what we need as humans. And there's a lot of other fun out there if they're just willing to take a chance to explore and get a little uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Well, a last question, because I know this is probably like the question I get a lot right now. Is what is the plan for this off season? How are we going to make it to the next level, and what does the next level look like through your lens?
Yeah. I thought about this a lot. Actually, I thought about this the whole flight home in between playing Pokemon Silver. I was like, what does that look like for you? And I know one that the pieces we have to add, you know, being back, you know, in your lats, I want to see your lats. Literally, I want to see depth to your lats when you're in your back shot. Almost like it comes out at you like there's a 3D effect. I think you're really nicely in lower lats, having that depth, right? And it'll open your front shot when you open up, it'll look better too. You know, more adductors, bigger quad sweep, taking a look at that and trying to get that without adding glutes. We'll figure it out, you know. And I think a lot of time has to be spent there after getting healthy. You know, I think the whole next year needs to be spent growing. How that looks in terms of timetables, not necessarily sure, because in bodybuilding, as you know, we can't necessarily predict those, you know, but we have to add those pieces. You know, you obviously did exceptionally well this past weekend. I want to stand up next to a bunch of Olympians, not just 2. How do we stack up? And by the time we're done with their off season, I want us to say we stack up pretty well. And when we go to the Olympia, we're gonna do very well. We're not just there to catch a flight, to catch some vibes, and have a fun trip, right? Yeah. And then go out and party after we're done. No, we're there to actually do some work, step on stage, compete with the best in the world, because we are amongst the best in the world. And it's just going to take time to add those pieces. So, you know, it's going to be like, like we did between every growth phase for you, we did analysis. And then every time your training changed, it changed because you changed, and then your needs changed. And we set up your training just now where it's actually a week split, oddly enough for me.
I like
that. And it's because I want to hit things with frequency and repetitiveness based on what we need. Yeah. Right. And I don't think for you, it's going to take us a lot of hitting things from quote unquote different angles, or, you know, all the other fun stuff people like to say. It's just going to be repetitiveness. So get you healthy, grow the pieces that we need, assess to see where we're at. But I think it's going to take a couple growth phases. It's not just going to happen in one. Ideally, it'd be awesome if it happened in one. I think that's the best plan of action as of right now.
Yeah, I think so too. And just knowing like where like all of the kind of like setup and self-discovery that was happening during our growth phases throughout our off season before this prep, like I'm really excited about just how much more efficient we can be with our time in this off season coming up, is because, you know, like last off season I had my breast augmentation at the beginning. I was also like learning so many new things with you and with me and my life. I did a lot of like duck lining up in my life, you know, buying a house and like kind of managing relationships and like bringing the right people out and the right people in, just that building that supporting cast. And now I just feel like so well aligned and set up in every way to just like to execute it and do what we need to do, not waste any time.
Yeah, when you look at your first growth phase, and I always tell people this when they first use anabolics for the first time, I'm like, this is more of an exploratory and observational phase. It's not necessarily you're going to grow, but I haven't been the coach to ever push drugs in higher dosages. You know, we figure drug protocols, and we're talking a lot of milligrams per week in many cases. There's a place, sure. Like people are like, well, you want to be the best in the world. Like you gotta, like, yes, within reason, you know, for a certain amount of times, short period of times. But we don't have to observe anymore. We don't have to estimate anymore. We know exactly how you respond. We know exactly what works and what doesn't now. You know exactly what to expect out of your life and to have the people and the boundaries to put yourself in a place where you're not carrying around a ton of stress that's going to inhibit growth and potentiate inflammation. Everything is pretty much, quote unquote, we could call it a guarantee at this point because we know what we need. That doesn't mean everything goes to plan, but you trust yourself, comes back and circles back to the beginning. You trust yourself and me enough to be able to execute and show up every day.
Yeah.
And that's all it needs to be now.
Yeah. I'm excited. So is there any piece of wisdom or advice that you would give to anyone listening just about everything we talked about? One like wrap it up statement.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many good pieces that we talked about here that I would call like great life advices, but I will say this. Do an evaluation of who's around you right now. Do an evaluation with extreme scrutiny. Do they align with who you want to be and where you want to be? Or do they not align? Take the leap, make the changes, set the boundaries, and you'll find yourself at a far better place in a year. Yeah. If that's truly your intentions to be in that place, everything in your environment and your surroundings, and that goes for internal environment too, has to be centered within that. That's my bit.
That's true. He's not wrong. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I'm really excited. It's like it's a fun way to like recap the season, and I'm excited for the growth phase and getting on that Olympia stage. It's gonna happen.
Me too. It's absolutely been a pleasure for me within this off season. It's been fun as hell, or this off season and this contest prep, to be able to do this. And I appreciate you trusting in me when I know a lot of people thought I was probably crazy. And I might be, but that's okay. Crazy.
Yeah, I look back to when one of the coaches I interviewed that I didn't hire and I hired you, they like, oh, I've never heard of him. Like, well, you've heard of him now.
Yeah, now people are hearing of me, which is great. Yeah. That's cool. I'm happy about that because I know younger me, man, would just adore that opportunity to be heard. And so thank you for feeding into that. I really appreciate it beyond what I could explain.
Always. Well, if anyone wants to reach out to Mark, his information and Tomenek trained information will be in the show notes. And reach out because he's a pretty cool guy.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.